Every time I would see my dad, he would force me to hug him and kiss him.
Sydney Moncrief on fatherhood.
And the jazz sounds of Lionel Loueke, next on Black Nouveau.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Black Nouveau. I'm Milton Dockery.
And I'm Faithe Colas. We're glad you could join us. On this edition, we'll profile jazz musician Lionel Loueke and look at the importance of women getting mammograms.
We'll also have highlights from the 5th Annual Fatherhood Summit. But first, we begin with a wake-up call. Two recent reports that paint a bleak economic picture for Milwaukee's African-American community. 2 weeks ago, the U.S. Census Bureau reported that Milwaukee has the 4th worst poverty rate for a big city in the United States. The rate reached 27% in 2009, meaning that almost 162,000 Milwaukeeans lived in poverty last year, including more than 62,000 children. And last week, another report noted that joblessness among African-American males in Milwaukee has reached 53%. We are now joined by Eric Vaughn, host of the Morning Magazine, on 1290 WMCS, and Dr. Mark Levine, who released the report last week. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Levine, what does your study show, sir?
Well, it shows that the crisis of black male joblessness that we've been experiencing in Milwaukee now for 3 decades has intensified with the Great Recession, that we've wondered over the years as black male joblessness has reached unheard of levels, 40, 45, even 50% in some years. What would happen if the economy truly slowed down and we went into a slump, because joblessness was growing within the African American community for males while the economy was doing pretty well? Well, we found out by looking at the data for last year, which was right in the middle of the Great Recession, and we found out that African American male joblessness had in fact reached a new peak in Milwaukee at 53.3%, second highest in the country, only behind Detroit, which is almost 60%. And 6 out of every 10 African American males in the city of Detroit are not employed, working age males. So that was an extraordinary finding. And in addition, what we found was for African American males in their prime working years, that is between the ages of 25 and 54, when generally people are truly entering the labor force, that rate of joblessness in Milwaukee climbed to 44% in 2009, again, an all-time high. So we are now at the low point, if you will, for employment for African American males in Milwaukee, and coming on the heels of the data showing that we're now the 4th most impoverished city in the country. This is just a double whammy, a double hit in terms of the economic distress that our community is facing.
Other than the economic crisis, what are some of the other issues that's causing this?
Well, the economic crisis is certainly the main issue deepening it, but we've had a long-standing problem in terms of a job shortage in the community. We've had slow growth, which is essentially limited the economic opportunities, particularly for African American males. We have probably the 1st or 2nd highest rate of segregation in our metropolitan area. So to the extent that job growth has been occurring over the last 2 or 3 decades, it's been occurring out in suburbs where very few African Americans live and where the transportation links are quite limited, and so the opportunity to get jobs are pretty small.
Did your study factor into the numbers, felony convictions, because oftentimes felonies have a very difficult time finding employment?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we didn't look specifically at that as a contributor to the jobless rate per se, but we know that the era of mass incarceration, which has been developing since the 1970s with changes in drug laws, which have basically led to a large number of African American males being incarcerated, making almost a rite of passage, has essentially not only taken working age males out of the labor force, and therefore they're not employed, but in addition, it obviously makes it incredibly difficult to get jobs once they come out, and so we really need to address that in a policy sense.
Mr. Vaughn, did either result surprise you, sir?
I don't think it's surprising to anybody who is kind of watching the community. And given what I do every day, I certainly have I guess you could call it the benefit of having kind of a bird's eye view of the situation. I talk to families and heads of households, primarily women, who are oftentimes looking for jobs for their mate, their husband, their boyfriends, their sons, their nephews. So you know, it's certainly good to have the kind of data that Dr. Levine's office produces to support what is primarily anecdotal and the unfortunate realities that people live through every day. I mean, for the people who need the data to make them move and do what's right by, you know, families and others in this community, it's good to have that data there. But I think most people had a real sense of how dire the situation was.
In addition to the things that Dr. Levine has mentioned, are you hearing anything different or see anything different that could add to what he has stated?
I really don't hear anything any different. I think that the story is about the same as it's always been. I mean, now it has reached, I think, the crisis level. In fact, I think Dr. Levine's study references, at some point makes a reference to the word crisis. It's at a point now where if something isn't done, and I've suggested this, something very radical by leadership in this community, whatever leadership is, whether we're talking about the politicians, whether we're talking about the social service community, whether we're talking about the churches and individuals themselves, something drastic has to be done, or it will possibly be irreversible. We laugh at Detroit, we laugh at Cleveland, we mock them, but Milwaukee is not much better off, and this study confirms that.
What are your listeners saying?
They want to see something happen. They want to see the politicians who seek their votes, especially during this time of year, this season, to stand up and do something demonstrative to address this problem and many others. I mean, how many politicians knock on your door screaming about creating jobs? I mean, that's become the mantra of modern day politicians, to talk about jobs, 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 but the end result of those conversations is, what do I do next? That's what the politicians are asking, because they really can't do it. They haven't done it.
But gentlemen, are you surprised that there is not more of an outcry here about this?
Yeah, I am. I mean, every time I put out a report on this, and as Eric said, I mean, people in the community kind of know this. They react to my reports by saying, "Oh yeah, okay, it's great that you put the numbers on this, but we know, what's been going on for years." And every time I do it, the thought comes into my head: where is the outrage? I mean, where is the absolute apoplexy about this situation?
Not meaning to cut you off, sir.
Yeah.
But why? Why isn't there an outcry?
I think, Daniel Patrick Moynihan had a point that he made in the early 1990s in which he talked about a society sort of defining deviancy down. By what that he meant, sort of just accepting, normalizing things that we shouldn't accept. We hear it once, we get a little shocked. Then we hear it again. It's now part of the landscape. Milwaukee has an obscenely high African-American male jobless rate. Well, but we've been hearing that now for years. And so I think the edge gets taken off.
Briefly, gentlemen.
Yes.
What do we need to do to solve this problem?
I don't know that there's a brief answer to it.
I mean your response to it.
I understand, and I understood that. But I still say I don't know that there's a brief answer. I don't know that there's some magic bullet that's going to resolve this. But I do think that it's a matter of redirecting the resources that have constantly gone away from this problem, knowing that this was a problem. People who direct the resources have to redirect those to services and programs that are going to make a difference in this community.
Dr. Levine, briefly?
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, there are a packet of policies. I've recommended 5 or 6 in the report, which I would encourage people to read, but I think the headline one, the marquee one, needs to be a massive public investment, public jobs program. Then unless we get that kind of impetus, the private sector isn't picking up the slack, and we've now got to really address this problem.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks very much.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Unfortunately, African American women are more likely to die from breast cancer than all other women because we don't catch the disease in time. For too many reasons, we fail to get checked for breast cancer, and until recently, I was part of that group. It could be a lack of health care, believing the generational myths about mammograms, or in my case, fear, but far too many women choose to not get mammograms. Recently, at the age of 47, I had my first mammogram at Columbia St. Mary's.
Good morning, Faith.
Good morning.
My name is Nancy, and I'll be taking care of you today.
Hi, Nancy.
I'd like you to come right over here into one of the dressing rooms.
Okay.
Put this robe on, opens in the front. When you're done, put your clothes in one of the lockers and just have a seat. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carla Harris is a breast health clinician.
Here at Columbia St. Mary's, we use digital mammography in most of our facilities, and Actually, a woman is usually in and out in about 15 minutes.
I was ready to answer questions about my personal and family's health history.
Family health history is important. Studies have shown that there is a link to being in a higher risk category for breast cancer. If your immediate family, a mother, sister, or aunt, has had breast cancer, or even a daughter, breast or ovarian cancer. African American people, we don't always know our family history. Sometimes it's a little hush-hush about why grandma died. But you also have to put this in perspective that 70 to 80% of the time, women with breast cancer have no family history.
Do you have any family history of breast or ovarian cancer?
Yes.
Faith, I'd like to explain the exam to you. I'm going to take anywhere from 4 to 6 images. Okay? I won't know that until after the first. They are all routine images. Okay? What I'm going to have you do, let's say my fist is your breast. I'm going to put your breast here. This is called a compression paddle. It's going to come down like this and compress your breast. It's going to feel tight, a little uncomfortable, but as soon as the picture is over, it automatically rises. Okay?
Okay.
Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. Turn your feet nice and straight. Okay. Okay, I'm going to come from this side and just relax. Okay, I'm going to come underneath your breast. And this is my compression again.
Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Okay. It's going to be a little tight, just like that.
It's a little tight.
Stop breathing, Faith. And relax.
There are several myths that keep women from getting mammograms. I believe that mammograms were accompanied by extreme pain to the breast. That is not true. A very small amount of pressure is felt for less than 20 seconds. Carla Harris dispels some of the other myths that keep women like me from getting mammograms.
Another myth is, because I have no symptoms, I have no breast cancer. And the truth is that many times breast cancer really is symptom-free for a little while until it's more advanced. Another myth is that breast cancer is always fatal. And that's not true, Faith. We have many, many survivors. My mom is a 20-year survivor.
I returned to Columbia St. Mary's within a 48-hour period to receive the results from Dr. Cynthia Rice.
I've reviewed your mammogram, which is your baseline exam, and I see no problems. At this point, I would recommend that you have a repeat screening mammogram in 1 year and on a yearly basis from now on. And it's also important that you do a monthly self-breast exam and see a physician or nurse practitioner on a yearly basis for a clinical breast exam.
You may qualify for a free mammogram. Contact the City of Milwaukee's Breast and Cervical Cancer Awareness Program at 414-286-2133. Jazz has many different sounds and styles. The Lionel Loueke Trio combines post-bebop fusion, lyrical ballads, and African rhythms that reflects the trio's different cultural backgrounds. Liddy Collins has more.
The sound of jazz, created by a group whose members are from 3 different backgrounds and cultures, the Lionel Loueke Trio. These musicians with a love for jazz, Massimo Belcate from Italy, Frank Nemeth from Hungary, and from Benin, West Africa, Lionel Loueke. met and merged at Berklee College of Music in Boston. Their training in classical, Hungarian folk, rock and roll, and percussion blends together to create a jazz sound that's unique.
We say it's a mix of our cultures, you know. It's a mix of African music, European music, classical music, jazz. I think the common point is jazz. That's our, you know, basement. You know, we have the jazz. That's what we have in common. But then we have different influences from our background and our culture.
I think we try to play something that is contemporary of today, because so often when people hear the word jazz, they think automatically black and white, something old, 40, 30 years ago, which is true. I mean, that's when the jazz was born, but it's been alive since then, and it's been evolving, and we try to keep it alive, not just reproducing what's old. We don't want to play museum music, just try to emulate the great master. Obviously we listen and we love the great masters, but we try to say, tell our own story with that language.
We live now, so we're trying to play truthfully what is now. You know, like those people, whoever, like, doesn't matter, 80s or 70s or 50s or 30s, they were playing the music of now. I mean,
that
time. So they were not trying to play something that happened before.
First jazz music I heard was different than what I used to hear. So that's what caught my attention. First I was like, what's that? You know, something different than what I heard until that point. So I said, well, I like it. You know, I like it. I want to learn it. So I just start transcribing by ears. And then realize that it's based on improvisation. Because in my mind, at the beginning, it wasn't about improvisation. It was just like music I was playing in Africa. You know, basically they could do the same thing again. You know, but when I discovered that it's based on improvisation, it even makes it even better for me, because I was like, oh, that's cool.
When singing, Leonel uses a click sound that's part of a South African language called Xhosa.
It pretty much complete whatever I'm trying to do between the melody and the click and my instrument, so I can have some polyrhythm. It could be 3 different parts going on at the same time. Mostly I sing in fon, which is my language. I use a harmonizer, so I can, you know, I spread the voice. It could be like 4 parts harmony, and the click is in behind.
It's a one-man band.
Loueke's guitar is an art piece. It's custom made and has a classical neck. It's a hybrid. It's a cross between a classical and electric guitar.
The sound of it just blew me away, you know. And of course, it looks great, you know. And after every concert, everywhere since I had that guitar, every day there's always somebody asking about the instrument.
The main attraction of jazz is improvisation, so I really hope that the audience can feel that excitement that we feel that when we try to create something new.
The most important thing is the feeling.
Some people may cry, some people may be happy living, but there's always, the most important is leave that place with some emotion.
It's like basketball. You don't have a vague discussion on how to shoot a basketball. There are certain fundamentals involved in how to shoot. There are certain fundamentals involved in how to be a father.
This past weekend, the Milwaukee Fatherhood Initiative hosted its 5th Annual Fatherhood Summit. Former Milwaukee Bucks guard Cindy Moncrief was the keynote speaker.
That's what our job is, to create what? Positive memories. I'm a father of 4 sons, and I grew up in a household that did not have a father. Grew up with my father being present in my life, which is good, and then grew up with a stepfather. So I've always had certainly a personal stake in how important fatherhood is to us. And I remember when I was younger, just thinking all the things that I can learn from the past experience of my father, and also things that you read, and how I could improve upon being a better father. And I just wanted to be a better father for my child than what's given to me. I learned the value of hugs, and between males, between your sons. I was embarrassed when I was young, but my father would always make us hug him. And when we would greet him, we would have to hug and kiss him. And because of that, I grew up hugging my sons and letting them know that a show of affection with a hug between father and son is not only appropriate, it's also necessary. And that's a very valuable lesson. Sometimes it's not what people say, it's what they do, and that was a valuable lesson.
The summit addressed major concerns for Milwaukee fathers.
My baby mama put me on child support because another girl brought me a new car. She didn't even know what's going on with me, right? You know what I'm saying? She can ask me for money, I give her everything she wants, buy her babies everything they need.
You can't get caught up in that drama with your baby's mom because of the way she feels about the way the relationship is. You gotta deal straight with that child.
When you go back to something that you said, which is another point about baby mama drama, I've got to take accountability of how much did I play in it. You can't still play in the pool if you don't want to be there.
We want fathers to be in the lives of their children, but to do that, they need to make sure that they're current with their child support. We also know that as far as working, they need to be able to drive to get to most jobs these days, and they have to have their driver's license current as well.
This is my first time here. What really brought me is the fact that I wanted to become a better father. Not perfect, had a little bit of child support I need to take care of, and at the same time I lost my license. And so I figured, let's kill a whole lot of birds with one stone, and here I am.
Many of the workshops and activities spoke to bridging the gap between younger and older males.
The reason why I feel that some older people and some younger people can get along is because of that reason. Younger people think older people think they know too much, and older people think younger people don't know enough.
Excellent. I would say it is more of the tone that you take when you start to talk to a young person. It would be, instead of having a conversation, it turns into a debate. When it shouldn't be a debate, it should be a discussion between two people. It shouldn't necessarily be you telling me what I should be doing, but asking me what I think I should be doing. And if it's not right, then show me a different path. Not necessarily just, well, you should be doing this or you should be doing this, but how do you feel about this? How can we make this better?
One of the struggles that I have is that I deal with younger people that have more money than everybody in this room. And they think they know everything. But what you have to do is, if you listen to them and they sit and listen to you, you develop a communication, just as what this man was talking about. You've got to be able to communicate, whether it's right or wrong.
When we grew up, we respected thy neighbor, and thy neighbor would also discipline you if you were in the wrong. that communities have gotten away from that. We went to a whole nother trend to where it's kind of a bad thing to tell a kid that he's doing something wrong. Don't bust that window. That is not your house. You don't have to pay for that. We've gotten away from it, and it seems that now it's leading to people getting hurt by trying to correct the child in his direction.
In order to regenerate ourselves, we need to first deal with the positive things and the things that we have in common, because we're all older than some, younger than others. New school will become old school. And at 50, you're not going to be sagging, I don't think, because there's a different type of demand. We got to start talking about the commonalities amongst us and accentuate those and use those as the building blocks to overcome the many, many, many problems that we have.
The annual event has become important for fathers trying to make a difference in the lives of their children.
I was hoping to get some more information or input on how to better myself as a father. I'm not a bad father, I'm a wonderful one, but you know, there's always new information out.
I wanted to be a part of it because I wanted to be a positive role model and a positive father for my sons and daughter.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau.
Remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.
Good night.